Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Boozer here. In today's video, we're going to do something a little bit different. Since we have a bit of downtime and because we're not going for this fusion, I'm just, not even going to worry about this. It's, going to be my first fragment fusion that I actually don't complete. But that also gave me an idea for a video, so I want to share it with you guys. Did some a trip down memory lane. So this might be more applicable to older players or players that have been playing for a bit longer, but it might be beneficial for newer players as well to see what they can expect from fusions. So in this video, we're going to talk about fusions, past, present fusions, and how they have impacted my account, and just my general thoughts on all the fusions up to date. Sometimes the perceived value of a fusion doesn't actually impact your account. So maybe in this video it'll give you guys maybe a different outlook on going for fusions and expectations around fusions and whatnot. So let's get started here. So this is what I got going on. I basically ranked all the fusions from beginning to end using Hell Hades' website here. His website shows all the fusions, nicely laid out, has his own internal website rating. So if you guys want to check out his website, definitely one of the best resources for Raid Shadow Legends. Definitely check it out. But for me, I have it laid out here on the left-hand side. I'm going to move my head over to this side. And so I basically started around the end of 2020, so I would have missed most of these fusions. So I put a line here as to when I would have started. So I missed all of these fusions. So Sir Nicholas, Shamrock, Foley, Molly, Harvest Jack, Brachus, Tormin, Rhodos, Cillian, Skull Lord, Burgal, Griptuk, Kantra, and I started at the end of Kreela. So I didn't rank these champions based on whether I have them currently or not, but all these fusions I've never done. So here, Sir Nicholas was the first fusion. When he was released, he was obviously insanely good with the block damage skill and the big shields and the big hits. I never pulled him. I still think he's a decent champion for general progression, so I do have him rated as a 7 out of 10. He's no longer as insane as he was before, since there's other block damage champions and he doesn't hit as hard as he does before. Since there's other champions that have now out damaged him in the HP category. Next is Shamrock. He actually was a really, poor-ish champion based on the fusion when he first came out, but as it turns out, all his skills are actually quite strong. So he actually has speed up. He has a bunch of stuff going on here. He has speed up, turn meter, defense up, crit rate buff, which is kind of irrelevant. He has decreased speed, which is also really good, and a chance to steal some buffs. So his kit is actually really strong for Hydra, and that's basically where I use him. I do have him on my other account, and I do use him in some situations, although I don't use him as much anymore. So I have him rated 6 out of 10 just for his niche usage. Still a decent champion if you guys ever pull him, especially for Hydra. Moving up, we have Foley. So Foley, he's kind of just damage dealer. He has block revive, which is really nice. He has leech. He has a multi-hit. He has a defense down as A1. I do use him on my other account, and he was my main nuker for a long time. I've since kind of replaced him a little bit, although he is pretty special with his block revive. But he doesn't hit hard enough. But in terms of like impact on my account, when I pulled him, I didn't complete the fusion. When I pulled him, he was actually very strong. So I do put him as an 8 for overall impact on my account. But as a champion overall, he's not super strong, and he's definitely a skippable fusion at that time, I think. Moving on, so we got Molly. Molly's actually really strong. Spirit champion, has a 1 turn 50% chance for 2 turn provoke. She has a revive and a passive that increases the team turn meter when they're hit with a crit, when she's hit with a crit. So I have her rated as a 7, which means she has general utility, like against waves. Hydra, she's very good. And impact on my account is actually very high because she was actually one of my first CC champions. When I pulled her, I never completed the fusion, but when I pulled her, she was one of the first CC champions, and she was actually really good against Hegemon. So I had her built in like immunity with accuracy, so that she can take the Hegemon hits, boost turn meter, and then we can go, basically get a turn before them, cut in on them. So that was kind of the idea with Molly. She was actually really impactful, and she's actually still very good for me to this day. I still use her for Hydra. She's a very auto-friendly champion for Hydra because her AoE is area-wide and doesn't require any kind of specific targeting, and she has a revive, which is very nice, and she boosts your team speed. Very good champion, very good fusion back in the day. Moving on, we have Harvest Jack. So Harvest Jack, I have it rated as a 5. He's kind of like a utility champion that's a little bit annoying. He has like super high base HP, but he doesn't really have too much else going for him. Like he's looking at stealing buffs, placing some fears. He has some debuffs, just kind of being annoying. I pulled him from a shard and literally have not done anything with him. So to me, his impact is 0. All right, so after Harvest Jack was Brachus. So Brachus is the werewolf, really cool, like passive that keeps him alive when he takes fatal damage. He has like a 6 hitter on his A2, and then a single hitter that can steal life back. So he's a pretty cool champion. For most people, I don't think he's super good. So Brachus is right here. I have him at a 5 out of 10, but honestly, when I pulled Brachus, he was actually really, really good for my tag team arena. So he gave me a solid go second team back in the day. So Brachus definitely was very impactful for me when I pulled him, but if I were to pull him today, he wouldn't be that great. So I just want to go over like these ratings. I guess I should have done this at the beginning, but so these are just my ratings, like kind of like my general population type ratings. So this is how I would imagine this champion would be for kind of everybody. Obviously, it might be better or worse for you depending on what stage of the game you're at. And then this column is the impact column. The impact column is basically my personal rating for the champion when I acquired the champion. So you can kind of see, you can kind of compare how some champions they look good, but then it depends where you are in your progress, and then they end up not being what you need or not being as good as you expect them to be. So just want to get that out of the way. So that's Brachus. So moving on, we got Tormund the Cold. Tormund, really, really strong champion. Defense base, has passive freeze on any buff that you place on the enemy. So if the enemy places a buff, the Tormund can passively freeze them. He has an AoE smack, AoE provoke, single target strip. He does all sorts of stuff. Just a really strong champion. I have him rated as a 9 out of 10. In terms of just being a beast mode champion, he's actually very, very good. He's good in like wave content. Obviously arena content. He's not as good anymore because of stone skin and stuff. But yeah, generally he's very strong. And when I pulled Tormund, he was actually incredibly strong for me, although he was only useful in arena. And that is important. But at that time, I already established my arena teams, tag team arena teams. He did make them a little bit better, so I will give him a positive rating for impact. But it all comes down to when you pull him. If you pull him early, he's going to be closer to a 9. But when I pulled him, he lost a little bit of value. But Tormund was one of the better fusions for sure. He was nerfed a couple times because of his passive. He's too strong in the arena. So moving on, we have Rhodos. So we have 2 of the best fusions ever of all time right next to each other. Rhodos was like famously like kind of slammed by most people that had access to him early, saying that he would not be a very good champion, saying that he wasn't very strong. But I mean, if you look at his kit, he's kind of he has that very very powerful passive where he cannot die to a single hit. It takes multi hits to kill him, and then he'll always get a turn. And with this kit, he has the ability to chain multiple turns together, dealing lots of damage, and he has recovery. So he's a very, very strong champion. He's a one-man army. I have him rated as a 9 out of 10, and when I pulled him, instantly transformed my account. He gave me a 100% like legitimate nuking champion. He could kill like the champions that no other champion on my account could have killed at that time. So he gave me that ability. So definitely changed my account when I pulled my first Rotos. Moving on, Cillian the Lucky. So Cillian was actually like really poor when he first came out. Definitely not a very good champion, but he actually got buffed. So after his buff, he's actually pretty good. After his buff, he was actually quite strong. He brings a bunch of he hits hard, and then he also brings a bunch of debuffs. So he has stuns, turn meter, this passive that gives him a bunch of random buffs. You don't know what you're gonna get, but like you can kind of like all these are kind of good. What else does he have? He has a decreased speed A1. He has an attack all enemies block skill. So and it hits pretty hard. So he hits pretty hard. I remember before I think he only had a single target attack. He didn't have AOE, so he was actually way worse. So actually he's actually pretty viable, especially for Bannerlords too. But Bannerlords are pretty good faction, so you probably don't need Cillian anymore. Cillian is the empowerment for Rhonda, which some people have done. It was kind of bad that they announced Rhonda and then Cillian to go into Rhonda, and then they did the Cillian buff afterwards. That seems kind of shady to me, but like it is what it is for Plarium. So yeah. Anyways, with Cillian Lucky, I have him at a 0 impact. I never used him. He's stuck in the vault when I pulled him. And I think during the fusion, he would be considered poor. So definitely not somebody that you would probably go for. All these fusions back in the day were traditional as well. So definitely not easy. Not as easy as fragments. So moving on, we have Gerptuk. Gerptuk generally, like, he places poisons on your team, but then he buffs the damage based on how many debuffs. It's kind of an interesting kit, like a self-damage, healing, and then boosting your output of damage. He's good for, like, I don't know. He was used in some arena where you would boost the damage of your nuker, and then you would nuke and finish off a team. I never used him, so I didn't really like his kit. I didn't think it was super applicable most of the time. So I gave him a 0 for impact. I never used him at all. I gave him a 3 for an overall. I mean, if you pulled him, you wouldn't be too happy with it because he's just not super useful. Moving on. So Kantra the Cyclone, July. It was summer 2020. Kantra, really cool kit. She's hard to kill. She has a passive that keeps her alive. Has provoke. Has an automatic passive provoke, which is really nice on any enemies with 5 or more debuffs. And she has A1 skill steal, which is cool. And then her A2 is just like RNG Fiesta, right? So I think there's like 5 skills that can be 5 debuffs that can be placed, and she places up to 3 of them. It's a really cool kind of effect, kind of RNG-ish, but because of her passive provoke ability, 75% chance to provoke any enemy with 5 or more debuffs, and she can debuff enemies with her own skills. It makes her very viable for Hydra. She's very auto-friendly, very good. I had her for a long time. Her skill kit looks very strong. She's a very tanky champion, and when I started using her, she was highly impactful. She's one of the few champions on my account that had provoke, and it really, really helped against the Hydra heads. So she is really impactful for me. I know a lot of people like her for Hydra, and for sure that's her best spot. So moving on, we got Kreela Witch Arm. I started at the end of Kreela. I remember I saw fragments for Kreela, but I never obviously participated. Overall, she's an ally attacker. She has attack up buff. She hits decently hard. Her kit's to me about a 6. She doesn't really bring too much else other than hit hard and ally attack. However, when I did pull her and I built her and I used her, she was actually super impactful from bringing my 3-key Ultra Nightmare down to a 2-key Ultra Nightmare, because I was using the budget unkillable team with 1 man-eater, 1 painkeeper, and adding the ally attacker boosted my damage up to a 2 key level, so that saved me 1 key per day. So very impactful for my account at the time that I pulled her. Okay, so up until this time, this is when I first started playing Raid, right around the Dracul, the Gaunt fusion. So Dracul, he's like a Ogren. He looked kind of blah to me. He's kind of a tank. He has defense up. He has some block damage stuff. He has a stun. Kind of a weakish support, but honestly, like, he's still support. At that time, he's a fragment. I did finish him. Initially, I used him for Faction Wars. He did help me finish Faction Wars, but afterwards, he kind of just landed in the vault. So overall, his kit's about a 5, and overall impact, he gets about a 5. He did help Faction Wars a little bit. I did use him a little bit here and there, just because he was one of the first legendaries I got after playing for 1 month. So I did use him here and there. So he gets a 5 from me. Moving on, we got Vergumkar. This one was pretty funny because I started following Raid at this time, like kind of more closely. I started watching content creators and stuff like that. And then they were saying how Vergumkar was basically like the sausage frog, and they were making fun of him and how he's so bad and this and that. And then I'm just kind of laughing because he does look kind of funny. But he brings like some AoE conditional strips. He was touted as the next Doom Tower champion. Like, he would deal with Doom Tower waves and all that stuff. In the end, he never really lived up to it. He was one of the few champions with a strip move, so he does have some value if you're missing that kind of champion back in the day. So he wasn't like super bad, and his kit was intriguing enough that people did kind of go for him, even though he was a traditional fusion, because they weren't sure what Doom Tower would look like, and they were just preparing for Doom Tower. But to me, I never used him. I didn't finish the fusion, but I did pull him. I never used him. He's in the vault. So moving on, we got Elegaeus. This guy's another meme-worthy champion. So when I started, there were some bad champions. Elegaeus, he has some unkillable passive that makes him immune from fatal damage. He has block buffs. He has like some steals, block active skills or something. He does bring a bit of like tricks in his kit, but honestly, it doesn't feel like it's very good. Long cooldowns. You have a quick look here. So he has a block active skill on his A1. He has a single target block buffs. That's what it was. If it was an AoE block buff, this would actually be okay. And then he has AoE chance to remove. So AoE strip and then decrease turn meter. He's kind of like a wave control champion, but he's just not very good. So yeah, overall, he's one of like the meme-worthy champions. Give him a 2. He was kind of impactful for me, actually. I did pull him for Faction Wars. This was before CVC, so I did pull him for Faction Wars, and he actually helped me clear Faction Wars 21. So his unkillable passive was very useful against the boss, who one-shots your whole team. So he was useful there. So he holds a special place in my heart. He's still 50 though, but he was good enough to use for that final fight. So moving on, Burgoth, the Malform, another champion that was made fun of when it first came out. Honestly, his kit's like not that good. He's just an epic. He's not that good of a kit. The biggest thing about his kit was that he did have a provoke, an AoE provoke. It wasn't 100% AoE provoke, but at that time I had nobody for Night Revs, and it was the hardest faction crypt to clear. So I did pull him to help me clear the faction crypt, and that's what he did. He did help against those Valkyries on wave 2, and his provoke was very useful. But after that, he's basically in the vault, and every copy of him I use as food. So yeah, not a great champion, but was useful when I needed him. So coming up next, Pixneo. Pixneo was one of those champions that no one liked, and everyone was correct that she was just terrible. Yeah, she was just kind of terrible when she first came out. Very weird kit that didn't really mesh together, didn't synergize together. And yeah, a lot of people passed on her. She was a traditional fusion, so harder fusion. I passed. I was still relatively new in the game, so I wasn't able to obviously complete this. And I've never pulled her. Sorry, I never used her before, actually. So this one should be a 0. I never used her before. I do have her, unfortunately. She did get buffed recently. I think that's where this 2 rating comes from. She did get buffed to like some usability, but she's still pretty bad and pretty unimpactful. So moving on, we got Iron Brago. Iron Brago is a fragment fusion at the start of the 2021. He is one of the first fusions that I did on my second account, which is now my main account. So my main account, he was the first fusion that I completed, and he was a massive fusion. Basically, when I completed him, he was a massive fusion for both my accounts, because he was the first like real good legendary champion that I had on both accounts. Although his kit doesn't seem, spectacular, it seems good. He has like an AoE 3-turn provoke. He has a defense up, 3-turn cooldown, 3-turn duration, 3-turn cooldown, which is actually pretty special. There's not too many champions with a 3-turn duration defense up. And he smacks, and he has a passive that gives your team defense based on his own defense. So, he's a really good champion, but when I got him, he was so impactful. He was basically a game changer for me when I got him. So about 3 or 4 months into the game, or 1 or 2 months on my other account, he was a game changer for my account. So 10, I used him everywhere, clan boss, everything, doom tower waves, dungeon waves, everything. So I used him everywhere. He was massively impactful. It's just a great champion. Nowadays, I don't use him anymore. I use him in faction wars. That's about it. So recently retired from all my clan boss teams. So Iron Brago is one of the champions that was really, really good. Better than the kit showed, because of when I had him. So as a fragment at about that stage in the game, he was huge. He's massive. So coming up, we got Astrolon. He's a super cool looking champion. Was done around February, so around Valentine's Day. He had that new model going on where he's like breathing hard with the wings and the cool stance. He has a 4-turn AoE stun, and then he has a single target A2, which just smacks like crazy hit, has a revive. He has some weird turn meter stuff on his passive, which makes arena sometimes weird and hard. But yeah, his kit was very strong. He had good base stats for a nuker. He had 1600 attack or something. And yeah, I went for him. He's a traditional fusion, so it's a little bit harder, but I went for him. So my first traditional fusion that I completed on my accounts. And yeah, he was super impactful for my accounts. He was my main nuker. He was my main nuker for a long time. On one of my accounts, and on the other account, I had a skull crown, so I didn't really need him. But Astrolon was very, very strong for my account when I got him at about the 3 or 4 month mark. And I used him everywhere except for Clan Boss. And to this day, I still use him in Faction Wars, but obviously retired from all my late game dungeon stuff and wave clear stuff. But Astrolon was a very good champion when I got him. Yoshi, so that's the next one coming up. Fragment Fusion. He has an interesting kit, very special. Accuracy up, which was very special back in the day. No one had accuracy up. And it's paired with attack up. He also has a pretty cool passive where he can cut in based on, I believe, based on buffs applied. So similar to Valkyrie, but it boosts his own turn meter. He places some fears, has a stun. So kind of a cool champion. He ended up being like an arena champion. I did pull him and used him for arena for a little bit for like bombs and, lockout, cooldown reduction champions. But since then, he's kind of been chilling in the vault. I haven't really done anything with him. He's not even in my Faction Wars team, and I don't use him in any arena right now. So to me, overall impact's about a 1. Yeah, he was kind of fun to use for a little bit, but I since retired my bomb champions and my bomb team. Obviously, with the sheep nowadays, it's not going to be any impact whatsoever. You definitely don't want to. You don't want to pick those bomb teams to apply. You don't to apply those debuffs into sheep, right? So moving on from Yoshi, we got Brogni. So Brogni was one of the up to this point in my raid life, 5 or 6 months into the game. Brogni was the first traditional fusion that I basically said, this guy is going to change the game for anybody that gets him. So even for me at that time, I was very like, I felt very strongly about Brogni. I felt like he was going to be extremely strong. I was like, this kit's too good, especially compared to the other champions that I've seen, because he places block debuffs, a shield, and then he heals off his shield and deals damage off his shield. So I was like, what? That's like so good. Well, obviously, even at that time, I didn't know how good it would be, that the damage would be insane and that he could make insane shields with his growing ability. So, of course, I went for him. I gave him a 10 right away because I wanted him right away. And he ended up being a 10 right away. I used him in all areas. He basically created my, boosted my clan boss team into like one key territory. So yeah, it was just a massive champion for me. I'm sure a lot of people, it's just a massive champion. So, it's just, he's probably one of the best champions of all time. One of the best fusion champions of all time. So, moving on, and still remembered as one of the hardest traditional fusions of all time. It's kind of interesting. So, moving on, we're going on to the Rule Huntsmaster. I give him a 6. He was very special at the time. He had a Hex, and then he hit super hard. With his conditions fulfilled. Overall, I didn't really do anything with him. He was kind of in the vault. I never found a good spot for him. I believe I used him for faction wars only. And I tried him in a couple comps for some hard spider. I tried him a little bit in like Hydra when Hydra first came out, but like Ruel just, he's not going to be as good as any traditional nuker where it doesn't need any setup. Needing setup is just not going to be as good. So overall, Ruel didn't have any impact on my account. So I just want to take a quick stoppage here. Like, it's kind of like, I guess the point of this is kind of to show that, like, yes, sometimes fusions look good, but it's actually when you pull them and when you need them and how much they actually impact your account. So sometimes champions that you think are good, they actually don't do anything for you. And sometimes champions that you think are kind of bad, they actually do stuff for you when you need them. So that's why it's kind of like you never know when you should or should not go for fusions, or when you should or should not, like, basically discount a fusion right off the bat. So no matter how bad or good a fusion is, you're always going to find some use for it. Sometimes. And sometimes you might not. Sometimes you might never find use for it. So it's kind of hard to say right off the bat to like skip or go. So just kind of what the point of this exercise was. But so after Ruel, what did I got? I got Herndig. So Herndig was actually a massive champion for me because he was like the nuker that replaced Astralon. He was like an actual real nuker for me, and actually had like better. He had a better skill kit than Astralon because he had the turn meter. He hit harder. He had the A1 reset. Double turn, and he was just generally like a harder hitting champion than my Astralon. So I actually replaced my Astralon with Herndig. Great kit, and his impact was immediate. He was good in he's good in Fae, Dark Fae. I used him in a lot of Doom Tower waves. Used them everywhere for any kind of wave content. And yeah, he brought some debuffs too, so I did give him a little bit of accuracy. But excellent champion, Herndig. I don't use him much anymore, kind of just for Faction Wars and Dark Fae. Next up, we got Versolf the Grim. On paper, he has a decent kit. It's very vanilla. He has a 3-turn defense up, block debuffs, which is... he has a 3-turn defense up, ally protection, which is actually a very good skill for Clan Boss. And he brings like a A1 provoke. He brings like an A2 AoE smack, double hit conditional smack, and he has like a passive that can provoke, chance to provoke. So generally, he's actually kind of a good champion. Like, his kit is good. So Versolf, I gave him a 6 out of 10. He has a decent kit, kind of boring but decent. He's viable in Hydra nowadays, but I don't use him there. When I pulled him, I had to use him for Faction Wars, even though he sucks in Faction Wars. Especially for 21, which is what I was using him for. 21, the Valkyries like basically feed turn meter off of his skills, and the final boss will steal his buffs. So he's actually, not very good in Faction Wars 21, but I had to use him. I had nothing else. So, but overall, I never found use for him afterwards because yeah, my clan boss teams are kind of set up, but I'm sure if you pull him early, he would be a pretty big champion for you guys. Next champion, Mother Cybele. So Mother Cybele is another champion, traditional fusion, so it's already harder. And people panned her so bad. People said she was garbage. She had no place in the game. Her kit didn't make any sense. Blah, blah, blah. So actually, her kit didn't make much sense. But she is kind of like the revive, healing. She's the mother. She takes care of your team type of like theme. Obviously, right now, like her only real use is her A1 decrease speed AOE, which is actually very strong for Hydra. You you can put her in a stun set. She's gonna be very good in faction wars as well. I've seen her used in some Bombo teams where she can use the revive on death. But yeah, for me, like I thought the kit was kind of okay. I ended up going for her. She definitely was harder. And in the end, I didn't really use her for too much. I did use her for Hydra a lot in the beginning, so she was helpful there. There's not too many AoE speed, decreased speed champions, so she was actually very good for Hydra. And I did try her out a little bit for Bombo and Revive on Death, but it didn't work out. But I did use her for a long time for Hydra, so she did find some use there. Rorik Wormbane, Fragment Fusion, so a bit easier, but honestly, I did not like this guy's kit. He is basically just a single target hard hitter. He ignores some defense on his in his kit, and basically you only kind of use him for clan boss as a damage dealer. To me, he just CVC points and ended up in the vault. I never used him again. So yeah, that's Warwick, definitely, but he was just a fragment, so it's not a big deal for me. This one, Sigmund High Shield. So Sigmund is kind of like a mix. It's like a hybrid, like traditional plus fragment fusion back in the day. So you had to collect fragments of champions, level them up, and then feed them into to make Sigmund in the end. So the thing with this one is that Sigmund actually is a good champion. He actually has a very good kit. Kind of generic, but very good. So he places shields on your team. Shields on your team equal to max HP. That's good. Strengthen as well. And then he has this passive, not super relevant. Attack all enemies twice, provoke. So he's AoE, provoke, and decrease attack. So he's actually viable for like Hydra and stuff. And then this A1, not super relevant again, but generally not a bad champion. The problem with him was that Demitha was one of the pieces that went into him. So for me, I didn't complete this fusion just because I kept the Demitha. So I kept the Demitha, and in the end, the Demitha was super impactful for me. Even though I didn't get Sigmund, I got the Demitha, and she transformed my clan boss team into one key team. So she is one of the most impactful epics you can pick up at that time. So very good epic for me. So moving on, we got Vlad the Nightborn. Was a fragment back in the day. He was recently buffed. He was recently buffed to have AoE skills instead of single target. So definitely a huge help. His existing kit, I would say, is about a 7, so slightly above average. He has a bunch of AoEs. He hits decent, places some debuffs. He has low base attack, so that's not really too helpful for making him hit hard, but he's probably more of a debuffer. Overall, he was basically just used for CVC points and for faction wars. And I didn't really need him for faction wars. I just wanted to try to make a good time, and then he was basically just put into my good gear, and then I just made a good time with him, and then I stripped him of the best gear. So overall, not too much use from him, but for faction wars, he's actually very good. Really handles those Valks. Moving on, so we got Vildrax. He's an epic. He was one of those Hex champions that people said like might be relevant somewhere someday. But in the end, his kit was kind of underwhelming, and overall, just CVC points, and all copies of him I basically use for food nowadays. So moving on, Tatura Rhymehide. So traditional fusion was super hard to get, similar to like Brogni. Not on those levels, I think, at that time, but still very hard to get around Christmas time. So he was basically he was kind of pumped up a little bit. He had a 3-turn cooldown, defense up, and then block debuff. And then he had an accuracy down on his A1, which is kind of cool. And then he had a similar move to Sir Nicholas, where he can make a shield based on damage he dealt. And he has a passive that kind of freezes, chance to freeze when he gets hit. So he's a good champion. So I gave him an 8 out of 10. He's a good champion, but overall for me, he honestly did nothing. My clan boss team was already set, and his kit just didn't really do anything for me. Like, I tried him in Hydra, a little bit clunky for Hydra. You can use him for Veil. You can use him for Veil against the Torment Head. A little bit clunky. Not perfect solution, but it worked. His 3-turn cooldown, block debuff, defense up. Just, I didn't need it anymore. I had an unkillable team. His accuracy down didn't work for me in terms of finding the right team to deal with Bommel. I didn't need it. So overall, not super impactful, but a great champion still. I don't use him in Faction Wars because High Elves is actually super easy to build, just like a glass cannon team with Arbiter, and you'll do everything super fine and super fast. So at that time, I didn't need him for anything. If you guys pulled him early, he'll be massive for sure. So moving on. Oh, pardon. This guy's a bunch of, I believe, turn meter stuff. Decrease enemies turn meter, fills this turn meter, attacks all enemies, has some healing, team healing, removes block buffs, heal reduction. Oh yeah, he has like a half cleanse, places a bunch of heals, places more heals, and turn meter. So he's kind of a weird champion. I'm not sure. I mean, it's kind of like control support, but honestly for me, like, his kit just didn't look super impactful. So he got 3 out of 10 for me, and then he was basically just CVC points when I pulled him. So straight into the vault after pulling him. Never used him. Not very impactful. So Corrado's traditional fusion, so harder to get. I was interested to see what I could do with him, but based on his kit, he's basically just a nuking champion. So Spirit Nuker, I wanted a Spirit Nuker just to have one. But overall, like, I ended up not using him at all because I think I got Magnar, and Magnar was just better as a Spirit Nuker, so I didn't bother with Corrado anymore. So in the end, I ended up pulling him for CVC points and just sticking him into my Faction Wars team. Overall, not very impactful. Nari the Lucky is a fragment. When I saw his kit, I thought it was kind of interesting. He had decreased accuracy, decreased resistance, and provoke. He actually seems like a good champion, especially for Hydra. But I don't know why. I never used them before. I even leveled mine up. I never used them before. So currently he's sitting at a 4. I think that rating's a little bit low. I probably would give him at least a 5. He has some debuffs that are pretty useful and unique, but hasn't found a real spot for him yet in any real team. I think for some Doom Tower it might be useful. For some Hydra it might be useful, just to support your team. But overall, no impact on my account. Never used them. Straight into the vault. I'll probably try him sometime, I think. So we got Gaius the Gleeful. This guy was kind of pumped out as the best bomb champion available. He does have an interesting kit, and when he goes off, he actually does. It's pretty satisfying to watch the bombs go off and blow up the team. So I did try him a little bit in Arena and Faction Wars and stuff like that. But ultimately, I took him out of my arena teams and Faction Wars, because in Faction Wars, he actually is a liability against the steals, the boss that steals your buffs and transfers debuffs onto you. So overall, like, I had my fun in Arena, but he wasn't very impactful for me. So Gaius, only a 2 for impact. So Bibble the Thorn. Kind of a boring kit. He has Provoke A1, Irresistible, basically irresistible. He has a AoE Provoke with Leech, basically irresistible. And he has a kind of like a Miscreant Monster, Sir Nicholas type move where he builds a shield on your team for damage that he deals. So there's an AoE. Like, it's kind of a boring kit when you look at it. Still an okay kit. So 7, similar to like Sigmund. Initially he was in the vault, and then when Hydra came out, he was freaking massive. When Hydra came out, he's massive. I give him a huge impact. Like I said, the Provoke champions, when the head of Decay was basically nerfed to allow Provokes, that's when a lot of these champions became maximum value. So this kind of goes back to what I'm saying. When you guys are thinking about fusions, you never know what content's going to come out. And sometimes the content basically perfectly lines up with something that you have, and it's going to be huge for your account, especially when you don't have it at that time. So for example Bivol. Example, what else? For example, who else? Wait, hold on. Bivol, Brogby, Hernding, Sigmund. Oh, Kantra. Yeah, Kantra is the other one that really was shining. Yeah, I mean, Brackus was also very good, underrated when I first saw him, but he was very instrumental in some of my tag team arenas. So yeah, it's just kind of the idea, right? Like, actually it happens quite a bit where content pops up and you need a champion to deal with it. All right, so next one, Helical. So Helical was traditional, definitely worth it. He was actually one of the best champions on paper when you look at him, bringing the block damage skill, as well as a big Valk-like ability without the counterattack. Good base stats, defense base, 9 out of 10 for me, probably a 10 out of 10 for a lot of people. However, when I pulled him, he initially sat in the vault for a long time. And then when I decided to build him out, he's going into like some arena, my live arena teams, and he's going to go into my Iron Twins team. But overall, I don't think his impact was that much. He doesn't really, yeah, his overall impact was not that high. I probably should give this like maybe like a 6. 6 sounds good. So overall, maybe like a 6. Not super high impact, but like I still found some use for him. He's definitely going to be stronger in certain accounts because he can build that unkillable team. But yeah, not for me at this point in my progression. And then moving on, we got Drang. Drang's an excellent champion. HP base, doesn't require accuracy to place his HP burns. Has an HP like kind of HP burn like trigger on the A1, so you can like activate it. Overall, I gave it like a 7. It could be higher, maybe an 8. Overall, I just pulled him for CVC points, and I use him in Ice Golem Hard and Sand Devil 25. That's basically the 2 spots where I use them. And I don't use them every day. I don't use them every day. And overall impact, not super high, to be honest. I could replace him in Ice Golem. I could replace and do 24 with Ninja instead. So even if I didn't have him, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Moving on, so little Nathril. This was one of the fusions where I chose not to participate. Basically, the champion is like, I couldn't find, I just didn't think it was going to be a very good champion. He has a weaker ally attack than like Farrakhan the Fat. The rest of his kit's just generally kind of weak. Didn't really make too much sense. Has like shields, but requires the shields to get hit or something. It's just kind of like a convoluted kit. And then, you know, in hindsight, you know, obviously going for it makes sense. Just to have things for faction guardians, especially for high elves, so that made sense at the time. But yeah, for me, like I just couldn't do it. It was one of the harder fusions, so I just left it. I just wanted a chill month for summer. This might have been when I was on vacation, so that's probably why I didn't do it. August. Now moving on, I don't know this one. This is an epic fusion, so definitely would have finished this, but I never used this champion before, so it's going to be a 0 impact. And then we have Mighty Uko, which is one of the best fusions of all time. I gave it a 10. When I saw this champion, I was like, this champion's unbelievable. He freaking does everything. He has everything in his kit. Like, he's just going to be unbelievable for Hydra. And you know what? He absolutely delivered. Even for my late game account at this time, he absolutely delivered. Like, I have a 2-year-old account at this stage in the game, and he still delivered. He's excellent in Arena. He's excellent in Hydra. He's excellent in Faction Wars. And then if you guys need him for Doom Tower, he's excellent there too. Just an absolute insane champion. He's wreaking havoc all over live arena every day. I just hate seeing his face sometimes, but he's there. But yeah, great champion. was a fragment too. I can't believe like people would have skipped this guy. This guy's just insane. Marianix has a decent kit. She's the only one with decreased defense and hex on one move. She has poor base stats. She's kind of built like a damage, like her kit's like a damage dealing kit, but then she doesn't. I guess she can put unkillable on herself or something, but like yeah, she doesn't seem that great. I haven't found a good use for her. I try to use her in. I was thinking about using her in like spider, hard mode spider, but then I decided not to. So currently he just sits in the vault right now. Was a traditional fusion, definitely one that I probably should have skipped just to save some resources. But yeah, next one we got Morgaine. Morgaine's like a speed champion, very fast base speed, has turn mirror manipulation, has a irresistible passive heal reduction. Was a traditional fusion too. A lot of people skipped this one because it was right after Miranix, and then you had two kind of so-so champions that people weren't excited about. Morgaine's basically like a legendary high Katoon, but obviously a little bit better with passive and just generally a better kit. But both Marianix and Morgaine ended up being in the vault for me. I've yet to pull them out for any reason. I'm slowly leveling up Marianix and Morgaine just for like because they're legendaries. Never know if they'll become useful one day. But so far, no impact on my account. We had Hoscroll. Hoscroll is actually a pretty good champion, especially if you guys get him early. He has an AoE stun, which is very good. He's part of the Barbarian faction though, which has Syl, so it's not going to be too useful if you guys are past mid game or past Syl. But before then, he's actually pretty good. But yeah, I haven't got a 5. He's an epic. He's not going to have incredible kit or incredible stats, but he's a decent champion. I used him for CVC food and CVC points and food, but 0 impact on my account otherwise. Moving on, we got Nishak. We got a super rat here, the rat with the bombs. Traditional fusion, definitely was worth it. I think his kit's very strong, works very well together. He's going to be the strongest bomb champion, I think, available in the game right now. I got him at an 8. I know some people would probably put him even higher than that, but to me, roughly about an 8 just because of how bombs work in this game. It's not going to be super effective, but he has a secondary effect where when the bombs expire, he places poisons, which is really nice. He has some solo applications, which I was unaware of at the time. So I feel like when I saw his kit, I didn't think of that. So definitely this rating of 8 should be higher. Maybe it's a 9, maybe it's a 10. Initially I had him, he was in the vault for a long time, and then I did build him out in the end, and I do use him for Bommel. He's a great answer to Bommel, speed through that boss finally. And he's a good secondary DPS in Hydra. So I do use him there. Overall impact to my account, I mean, he cleared Bommel for me. So I love it. That's huge impact. That saves lots of time. And he is my clear secondary account, secondary damage dealer for Hydra hard mode. So he's actually a very, very good champion. And he has some, like I said, solo applications. So he might find a spot on my account later as well. All right, after that, some really good fusions in the second half of 2022. We have Pythion. Python is a fragment. Can you believe Pythion and Mighty Uko is a fragment? Unbelievable. So insane value from this champion. It's a clear 10 out of 10. When I saw this champion, I was like, oh, basically it's like a Duchess, except it's a fragment fusion. But he's not as good as Duchess because Duchess is, obviously more proactive. She can buff your team while providing protection. Pythion's a little bit different. You don't always need to cleanse. Sometimes you want the attack up. Sometimes you don't have enough buffs to mitigate all the damage. So, Duchess is 100% there. She does her stuff. Python not always going to be super relevant, but cleansing is very important. Slightly more rare skill. So Python is still a 10 for me. And when I pulled him, he's about a 9. His overall value is not as good as I perceived it because my account was pretty progressed at that time, which happens. It's almost a 2.5-year-old account at this stage. And I initially used them for Hydra and all arena, so tag team arena, classic arena, like my defense and stuff. Even plat defense, I used them for a little bit. But in the end, I took them out of my Hydra teams and I just focused on some low end, some arena teams, mainly tag team. I do use them as a cleanser in some live arena spots. But I don't use him anymore for plat reset defense. So he did fall off a little bit in terms of how I would use him, but at that point my account was pretty stacked, so it might not be the case for everybody, but I think everyone would agree that he's a very, very good champion. Oello was coming up next. She's kind of a little bit was was a little bit hated on. She's traditional fusion, so a lot of people skipped her. She brings the res down, but it's a full-time res down with the way that her kit moves. She brings a lot of healing, which is really nice. I think she's going to be really good. I don't have a use for her right now, so she has 0 impact on my account, but I think she's actually a good champion. So definitely going to hold on to her, hopefully find some use, obviously. But currently chilling in the vault. All right, Supreme Elhain was a fragment. It was a harder fragment to complete. It had higher values. She's in the vault on my main account, but on my alt account, she's actually my main damage dealer. I made a video on her recently, and I'm actually pretty impressed. She deals good damage. She cycles through her skills very quickly. She does nightmare difficulty. So on my main account, she actually doesn't do anything. She has 0 impact. But on my alt account, she actually gets a lot of play. She plays a lot every day in all arena situations. So yeah, so she's actually a pretty good champion. Void nuker as well, so just consistent. So Razzlevarg, the speed bunny, was bugged initially and then got fixed. Got too much speed, I think. And then now he's still pretty good. As an overall damage dealer, he does pretty good for Hydra. Personally, I haven't, I'm slowly leveling him up. Not really in any rush. I would probably use him as a DPS in Hydra. Although I'm starting to get a little bit stacked in terms of like role, like tier B champions for Hydra. So not too interested in like, speeding through him or anything like that. But I would like to try him eventually one time, someday in the future. He does have a pretty cool passive which increases his speed quite a bit. So maybe you can do something pretty cool. I know there's some clan boss stuff you can do with him, but not for me. My clan boss stuff is all done, so no impact on my account. And the last fusion that I did was Jenny. Jenny was just a fragment fusion, very easy to do. Her kit's okay. She hits okay. She's a spirit damage dealer. But overall, she's kind of just used for CVC points, and she just chilled in the vault. So basically no impact on my account. So anyways, thanks for listening to basically my whole history on these fusions and all the ones that I've done. So you can see here, most of the fusions that I pull have no impact on my account. And if you look at when I started, obviously the fusions that I had will be most impactful when you just start the game. But as you start progressing in the game, so basically after 1 year in the game, this is about 1 year mark, Sigmund. After about 1 year in the game, all the fusions afterwards were basically like non-impactful, regardless of how good or bad they are on first look. Only select champions will be good. So Bivold, Uko, Pythion, Nishak. So you could theoretically, skip a lot of these fusions and they would have 0 impact on anything. The problem is, if you skip too many fusions, you might miss out on gems like Bivold or Kantra that don't initially look super strong, but they are super impactful when you need them for new content. So it's interesting. And even some of these champions that are actually good, like 7, like to me, like these champions are all like above average, but I have no use for them. But maybe one day they will be useful. So that's kind of like this exercise that I wanted to put together. It's kind of nice to see everything in like in a graph and see how the champions actually helped your account or not helped your account. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of my ratings. I mean, I did try to rate some of these fusions before in the past. I think this is a little bit of a cleaner look. And obviously I added the impact column and my first use and my current use column just for some additional data points for you guys to go over. I mean, maybe this video helps you guys have some extra thoughts about skipping and doing fusions. Kind of just a discussion video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know what your experiences are when you guys are doing fusions, how you guys determine which ones to do. Do you guys do all of them? Do you guys skip all of them? For me, like Great Hoof was the first fragment fusion that I'm skipping. I usually skip the traditional ones because sometimes you get kind of lazy, and if they're that bad, I'm just gonna skip them. But Great Hoof, I could have done, but I just didn't like that they were forcing us to spend those shards. So I wasn't a big fan of that. And I just chose to, take my time, do something else with the shards this time. So, and to me, she's not going to be a great champion and likely have zero impact on my account at this stage in the game. But yeah. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it's a little bit of a long one. I appreciate you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.